Anthropic's $380 billion protection racket, how Claude Mythos crashed an industry then sold the cure. The official story. Anthropic, the AI safety company valued at $380 billion, announced Project Glasswing on April 7, 2026. The initiative gives select partners, including Apple, Google, Microsoft, CrowdStrike, and Palo Alto Networks, early access to Claude Mythos Preview, a frontier AI model that has discovered thousands of zero-day vulnerabilities across every major operating system and web browser. Anthropic says the model is too dangerous for public release and has committed $100 million in usage credits plus $4 million to open-source security foundations. The stated mission: secure critical software for the AI era. Sounds noble. What's actually happening? Let me walk you through what actually happened, step by step, because when you lay it out chronologically, the pattern is unmistakable. In late March 2026, documents describing Claude Mythos surfaced in a publicly accessible data cache, a draft blog post stored in an unsecured, publicly searchable data store. The post described Mythos as far ahead of any other AI model in cyber capabilities and warned it could spark a wave of models that can exploit vulnerabilities in ways that far outpace the efforts of defenders. Within 48 hours of that leak, cybersecurity stocks cratered. CrowdStrike dropped 11%. Palo Alto Networks fell 7%. Zscaler, SentinelOne, Okta, Netskope, and Tenable all slumped between 5 and 11%. The iShares Cybersecurity ETF lost 4.5%. Billions of dollars in market capitalization evaporated, not because anything had been hacked, not because any exploit had been deployed, but because of a draft blog post from an AI company. Then, on April 7, Anthropic formally unveiled Project Glasswing. And who were the launch partners? The exact same companies whose stocks had just crashed. CrowdStrike and Palo Alto Networks surged on the announcement. The message was crystalline: partner with Anthropic or face obsolescence. Now let's follow the money. Anthropic closed a $30 billion funding round in February 2026 at a $380 billion valuation. Their annualized revenue has reportedly hit $30 billion, with 40% of enterprise LLM spending flowing to Anthropic, surpassing OpenAI's 27% and Google's 21%. 85% of that revenue comes from business customers. Project Glasswing isn't a security initiative. It's a market creation event. Anthropic built the weapon, demonstrated the weapon, crashed the stocks of the incumbent defenders, then offered the incumbents a lifeline in exchange for becoming Anthropic's distribution partners. The $100 million in usage credits isn't charity. At Anthropic's margins, its customer acquisition cost for breaking into a $200 billion cybersecurity market where they previously had zero presence. The evidence trail. Let's start with the numbers Anthropic doesn't want you to examine too closely. The headline claims thousands of zero-day vulnerabilities in every major OS and browser. But according to Tom's Hardware's investigative reporting, those claims rely on just 198 manually verified reviews. The article's headline said it plainly: Anthropic's Claude Mythos isn't a sentient superhacker, it's a sales pitch. The gap between thousands of AI-flagged potential vulnerabilities and 198 human-confirmed ones is the gap between a marketing campaign and a scientific result. Now, those 198 confirmed vulnerabilities are genuinely impressive. A 27-year-old denial-of-service bug in OpenBSD's TCP SAC implementation. A 16-year-old vulnerability in FFmpeg's H.264 codec. A 17-year-old remote code execution flaw in FreeBSD's NFS server. These are real bugs that real humans missed for decades. No one is disputing that Mythos has genuine capability. But the framing matters. Anthropic's own engineers, people with no formal security training, reportedly asked Mythos to find remote code execution vulnerabilities overnight and woke up to complete, working exploits. The model wrote a browser exploit chaining 4 vulnerabilities together, including a JIT heap spray that escaped both renderer and OS sandboxes. Here's the question no one is asking: if non-security engineers at Anthropic could casually find overnight exploits weeks ago, what has Anthropic been sitting on, and for how long? The responsible disclosure timeline is conspicuously absent from the Glasswing announcement. When were affected vendors first notified? Before or after the stock-moving leak? Before or after the $30 billion funding round closed in February? And about that leak, a draft blog post about the most dangerous AI model ever created, stored in a publicly searchable, unsecured data store? From a company that markets itself as the responsible AI lab? That's either breathtaking incompetence from a $380 billion company, or the most effective market conditioning campaign in tech history. Why this framing serves them? Anthropic has pulled off something extraordinary. They've built an AI model, told the world it can hack everything, restricted access to create artificial scarcity, and then positioned themselves as the only ones who can protect you from it. This is the protection racket perfected for the AI age. Consider the incentive structure. Anthropic's $380 billion valuation needs to be justified by revenue growth into new markets. Their core business, selling Claude API access, faces commoditization pressure from open-source models and Google's aggressive Gemini pricing. They needed a new moat. Cybersecurity is a $200 billion-plus market dominated by companies that, until Glasswing, had no dependency on Anthropic whatsoever. Now look at the partnership structure. The 12 launch partners AWS, Apple, Broadcom, Cisco, CrowdStrike, Google, JP Morgan Chase, the Linux Foundation, Microsoft, NVIDIA, Palo Alto Networks represent a who's who of companies that would be most damaged by AI-powered cyber attacks. They're not just buying a security tool. They're buying insurance against Anthropic's own technology. Because the implicit threat is clear: if Anthropic can build Mythos, someone else can too. And the only defense is more Anthropic. The $100 million in usage credits deserves scrutiny. Usage credits aren't cash. They're commitments to consume Anthropic's compute at Anthropic's prices. Every credit burn generates data about how enterprises use AI for security, data that makes Anthropic's models better and its moat deeper. The $4 million in actual cash donations to the Linux Foundation and Apache is a rounding error, a fig leaf of open-source goodwill covering a deeply proprietary power play. And the restricted access model is the tell. Anthropic isn't releasing Mythos publicly, not because it's too dangerous, though it may be, but because scarcity is the entire business model. Too dangerous for you, but safe enough for our paying partners is not a safety policy. It's an enterprise sales pitch. The most effective one ever written, in fact, because it's backed by the genuine ability to crash your stock price. What happens next? 3 things are now in motion that will reshape the tech industry. First, the cybersecurity industry is facing an existential question. If an AI model can find exploits that survive 27 years of human review, what exactly are the 200,000 security analysts at traditional firms doing? CrowdStrike's 24% revenue growth suddenly looks fragile when a single AI model can outperform their entire Falcon platform at vulnerability discovery. Expect a wave of AI-powered security rebrandings from incumbents that are really just Anthropic API wrappers with a markup. Second, the arms race dynamics are terrifying. Anthropic says Mythos is far ahead of any other AI model in cyber capabilities, but for how long? OpenAI is reportedly working on similar capabilities. Google has the talent. China's AI labs are not standing still. When these capabilities proliferate, and they will, the current patch and pray model of cybersecurity breaks permanently. 0 days will be discovered and weaponized faster than vendors can patch them. We are entering the era of AI on AI cyber warfare, and Anthropic just fired the starting gun. Third, watch the regulatory response. The European Union's AI Act already classifies high-risk AI systems, and a model that autonomously discovers and exploits software vulnerabilities in critical infrastructure is about as high-risk as it gets. The US government's response will be telling. Will they regulate Mythos-class capabilities, or will the NSA and CIA quietly become Glasswing partners? The intelligence community's appetite for zero-day capabilities is well documented, and Anthropic just demonstrated the most prolific zero-day discovery machine in history. The deeper game is valuation defense. Anthropic needs to prove that its $380 billion valuation isn't fantasy math. By creating an entirely new category, AI-native cybersecurity, they built a narrative that could justify $50 billion or more in annual revenue within 3 years. That's not a security initiative. That's an IPO thesis. What you should do about it. If you're a security professional, start learning how AI models interact with codebases at a fundamental level, because your job is about to change permanently. The analysts who thrive will be the ones orchestrating AI-powered security tools, not the ones doing manual code review. If you're an investor, look past the Glasswing PR. The real winners aren't Anthropic's partners, they're Anthropic's compute providers. Every Glasswing credit burn generates revenue for Google Cloud, which provides Anthropic's primary infrastructure. Follow the compute bills. If you're a software developer, assume that AI-powered vulnerability discovery is coming for your codebase whether you participate in Glasswing or not. The capabilities Mythos demonstrated today will be commoditized within 18 months. Start treating security as a continuous, AI-assisted process, not a quarterly penetration test. And if you're a citizen, understand what just happened. One company built a tool that can break the software underlying civilization, restricted it to a private club of trillion-dollar corporations, and called it safety. Whether that's genuinely responsible or merely profitable is the question that should keep regulators up at night. Because when the thing that breaks everything is also the thing that fixes everything, and one company controls both sides, that's not security. That's leverage.